Hello, welcome to today's session. Today we would be discussing paper 3 examination for UGC NET. We will be covering the next 15 set of questions. So we will be covering questions 16 to 30 for UGC paper 3. So let's start with the first question here. So the first question here was about the Milgram's experiment. So what basically Milgram told was, Milgram's experiment was largely based on obedience. So the concept of obedience was the primary aspect in Milgram's experiment, and what he basically propounded under this experiment. So Milgram said that those who are more obedient try to follow the instructions to the extent of killing an innocent person. So what he said that if you are given an authority figure who is authorizing you and you are obeying that person, if a real obedient person would be there, he will tend to obey the orders to an extent that he will be killing another person. So people tend to obey orders if they recognize the authority is morally correct. Okay, so first and foremost thing is morally right. Okay, and the next thing here is he also explained there are two types of person. One are autonomous and another are agentic. So autonomous are those who are totally independently, okay, and agentic are those who are constantly directed by others. Do in this way, do in that way. So they cannot do things by themselves. They need constant orders from others. So those are agentic, and autonomous are those who can do things on their own. Now the next question. The id, according to Freud, is driven by aggressive and sexual instincts. According to Jung, this corresponds to the concept of shadow. Now, let's understand what was Freud's concept of id. So, Freud gave three concepts: id, ego, and superego. Under the concept of id, Freud said it is based on pleasure principle, ego is the reality principle, and superego is something abstract or kind of ideal state. Okay, so it was the thing that is based on pleasure principle, and according to Jung, the concept of shadow is similar to the concept of it propounded by Freud, and he said that this shadow is a highly differentiated version of unconsciousness, and it's very similar to it. The next question is an important question on Jensen. So Jensen, in his experiment on interests in learning, gave two abilities, level 1 ability and level 2 ability. Level 1 ability is known as associative ability. Okay, so it's the able to retain information based on rote memorization and involve little transformation on it. While the ability 2 is a kind of conceptual memory, so it's based on concept formation and higher level of learning where you can manipulate and transform the information that is coming into you. Okay, so these two things he talked about, what is level 1 and level 2. Now the question is, which of the following is not a characteristic of level 1 ability? Okay, now he said that Jensen said that level 1 ability, if we see, is constant across races. Since it's associative learning, you are trying to learn by association, be it any race, the ability would be constant, while the level 2 or the conceptual ability varies with race. Okay, so that's one thing he talked about. And the second thing he explained about level 1 was it is based on neural registration and consolidation of stimulus input. So whatever the stimulus is coming in, that would be retained. So basically what he said, so neural registration and consolidation of inputs he talked about. He said it involves literal transformation of input because it's associative. In conceptual, you can understand the concept and transform a lot of things. It's homogeneously distributed across various racial groups, while conceptual is not. Blacks and whites, you have a considerable difference. So the only thing which is not correct here is statement C, which says that level 1 is culturally reduced, which is incorrect. Now the next question is The next question talks about efficiency of a work organization most appropriately refers to. Now to help understand this, I'll give you just a simple diagram and you will get all the information from this. So here is the diagram. Okay, you have the time that you are considering. This is the time dimension and these are the effective criteria. So it says in near future, organization must be effective in accomplishing the purpose, in using scarce resources, and in satisfying its employees and clients. Okay, so maximum use of scarce resources of an organization definitely governs the efficiency of work organization. So that is where we get the answer for this question. The next question is, you are asked about the stages of behavioral self-regulation. What does the word behavioral self-regulation mean? Behavioral self-regulation means you are trying to self-regulate yourself. For example, I am trying to solve a problem. What would be the major steps I would do to solve this problem? First, I'll have to specify the problem behavior. What is the problem? That's the first stage I will do. Okay. Once my problem is analyzed, I'll try to find the collect the data on it. Okay. Once the data is collected, I'll find the consequences and the antecedents that can happen in this problem behavior. Then I'll try to develop a plan and finally implement the program. So this is the correct set of actions that we would require for any behavioral self-regulation model. The next is the stages of language development. When we talk about language development, there are so many things we need to know. Okay, the first is here. First thing we must understand for language development is phonological development. Phonological development means development of sound. So a child starts with babbling and then slowly tries to understand the meaning of words like papa, dada, and so on. So that is a kind of understanding or semantic behavior that is being developed. Okay. So you have the semantic development, you have the phonological development, then the semantic development. Then you try to make grammar or syntax. That is the correct usage of the word. Pani pina. So that is a kind of want to drink water. The child is trying to communicate by this means. So that is grammar and syntax that is being used. And finally, the child is able to produce a meaningful speech. So A is the correct order here. Now, a very challenging question for most of the students on principal component analysis. For this, we will be covering it principal component analysis in detail in a separate session. We will be taking two classes, one on factor analysis, one on principal component analysis. Now, let me briefly explain what is principal component analysis before you try to solve this question. So, what is principal component analysis? Supposedly, I am doing a field survey and there are 100 people in the villages on whom I am doing the survey. Okay. Now these 100 people I am taking, for say example, 25 parameters, 25 various parameters to assess the behavior of these 100 people. Now consider the extent of data. I will have 100 values here and 25 value here. So in all there would be 2,500 values, which is really unmanageable. Okay, unmanageable. So what I need to do is these 25 parameters I need to group. Okay, so I need to group it. The main reason is to reduce the number of items first of all, and when I am trying to reduce the number of items, I am reducing the dimensionality, the number of dimensions I am covering. Okay, definitely those dimensions would decrease. And because these dimensions are decreasing, what would happen? There would be variance. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to increase this variance or maximize this variance. So, for example, if I have all the data scattered along this, my aim would be to bring it along this line of principal component. Okay, so all the data would be along the principal component U and V, and these two components U and V of principal component are orthogonal. Orthogonal means they are totally uncorrelated by themselves. Since they are orthogonal, unities are always retained in principal component analysis, but not in factor analysis. So that's important. So first statement is correct. Now the two principal components I am finding, for these two principal components, they can be subjected to oblique rotation as well as orthogonal rotation. So 4 is incorrect here. Okay, principal components can be subject to both orthogonal rotation and oblique rotation, as we have discussed in the last session where we have talked about the Promax rotation. Now, what we said was to maximize the variance here. So first component tries to maximize the variance, and all the extracted components is uncorrelated with the previous extracted component. So 1, 2, and 3 are correct, and the fourth is an incorrect statement. Now next. This is a kind of a question based on general knowledge, I should say, or a general behavior that what most people face. Now, you have a list of functions of perception and a perceptual issue. Attention, what does it mean? Okay, attention, under attention, I will say, is there something? I feel there is something there. Okay, so I'm attentive towards that thing and I can find out, is there something? Okay, then I try to recognize. I can see a round thing like that. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to recognize that what is the thing. So this is recognition. Now what is localization? Localization, I'm trying to say, okay, this thing, this book is at my hometown. So where is something or object? I'm trying to localize it. And finally is abstraction. I am trying to characterize, give the characters of the thing or the object. Okay, so these are the major things we have talked about. And this was a question really based on your general knowledge. Now the next question. The next question is on lie detector. So what are lie detectors? Lie detectors are or polygraphs are basically instruments that are used to find out whether a person is telling a lie or not. So it's basically kind of detecting the behavior of a person. And how do we detect it? We detect it by physiological instincts or physiological indices, we should say. So these are heart rate, blood pressure, and electrodermal response. Besides these, we measure skin conductivity, pulse, respiration, and so on. Okay. So these are the things that we measure. The only thing we do not measure is the muscle tone. Now next question. Arrange the following stages of memory in the correct order. Okay. So you have the order here. Okay. Now what we are trying to do is we are trying to understand the correct stages of or process of memory. So the first here is formation of cell assembly. What does this mean? Under the cell assembly theory, we know when an axon of the cell is near enough to excite a cell B. So there is cell A and cell B. So if A is able to excite the cell B, and this happens repeatedly, okay, what happens is the growth process changes, and the both cells you can see the efficiency changes. So here you have what we are trying to understand. The efficiency of A is leading to the increasing efficiency of B. So we are trying to understand that. This is the first stage. The next stage is reverbation. What is reverbation? Reverbation is basically interpretation of the sounds or the initial phenomena. So we are trying to interpret them. Once we have interpreted them, we are trying to move it to a long-term potentiation or long-term memory. So what is the process here? So it is basically a long-lasting signal that transmits between the two neurons A and B, okay, and it provides a synchronous movement between the two. So that's the next stage. Then what we do is sprouting. Sprouting means spreading the knowledge or spreading the information you have across. And finally is the consolidation. What is consolidation? Consolidation is basically taking all the memory that is unstable. Okay, all the unstable memory, I'm trying to uh, encode it and provide it into a long-lasting memory. Okay, so these are the stages of memory process that we try to understand. The next question is a kind of better and simple question. Dash in which teacher does not have dash role, students pose and answer their own question. Now first let's understand the difference between conversation and talk. Conversation and discussion. So discussion is when two people are constantly interacting, and conversation is a talk. It's a kind of informal behavior. Okay. So conversation is one in which teacher does not have dominant role. Okay. And if the teacher won't have dominant role, what would happen? Students can pose and answer their own questions. So it's basically a kind of conversation, not discussion. Discussion is an interaction between two. Conversation is a kind of talk, basically an informal talk between two or more people. Okay. This question is a really challenging question, and most of the students think that it is a question based on rote memory. If I have not read anything about the decisions or something like that, how can I solve it? Okay, so the thing here is it's not a question of rote memory, but a really conceptual question. Now we just need to know the brief about something to answer the whole. So Kohlberg gave the theory of moral justice. Okay, and his theory was basically justice oriented under morality. So he talked about moral development of the people, but he talked about justice. The one who is right should get the essence of it. Sequoia, on the other hand, talked about care orientation, and she was a feminist. So she talked about the role of gender and women and care orientation. Gilgan was again a feminist, but her main focus was on individual performances. Okay, so Gilgan talked about specific individuals, Kohlberg talked about universal principles, Coe talked about care orientation, okay, and finally Walker talked about it's not caring, it was misprinted in the paper, it should be caring. So morality of caring and justice. Now, this is a very important thing. This statement is a result of moral continuum. Moral continuum was a concept that was propounded by Kohlberg after they had a controversy with Gilligan. So basically what happened was Kohlberg did all his experiments on meals, and Gilligan, when came to know this, she got very controversial with Kohlberg, saying that the results you cannot explain the results to be correct because they are too much meal centered. So she basically brought the concept of individual. So she gave 3 stages of ethics of care. First is self-orientation, second is other orientation, and finally you have the universal orientation. So under this Kohlberg and Gilligan controversy, what happened? Kohlberg was also criticized by Walker, and finally what happened was they gave the concept of moral continuum, in which they said there are two ends. One end we talk about caring, other end we talk about justice. So he said there should be a decision based on care as well as justice. Now let's understand what is meant by care and justice. For example, my son is not performing too well, okay, in a school grade 2, for example. Okay, so what would happen is, as per the justice, I would say he is not doing well, so he should be given extra time, extra tuitions, or whatever it is. Okay, that is a justice perspective. But what would be my care perspective? Since I am the mother of the child, I will say, oh no, he is so small, it's too early for him to understand these big concepts. With further classes, it would be easier for him. So that is what is a care perspective. So what Koi focused was the care orientation, Kohlberg gave the justice orientation, and Walker tried to maintain a balance and talked about expanding the concept of Kohlberg to moral continuum, where he said that there should be at one end there is care, and at another end you have justice, and what you have to do is to maintain the balance between the two. Now next question. The next question is about obsession. Now the question here is, which of the following does not describe an obsession? That means what is obsession? Obsession is a repetitive thought. So you have obsessive compulsive disorder. What is meant by obsessive compulsive disorder? Obsessive are repeated thoughts about something. Okay. Compulsions are repeated acts about something. So in this, an unwanted thought that a person finds intrusive or distressing is the obsession. So this is correct. So which does not describe the obsession is all the remaining of those. Okay, so it's 1, 3 and D. Does not describe obsession, and obsession means an unwanted thought that constantly intrudes a person. For example, a person can feel that I am going out from my home, so whether I have locked the door or not. Okay, so he'll have a constant thought, मैंने बंद किया था या नहीं किया था. Okay, so whether I have locked the door or I haven't locked the door, that is a constant thought that would be striking his mind. And what he would be doing is he would be going again up and down the stairs to check whether the door is locked or not. So that is compulsion. So doing something again and again is compulsion, and thinking something again and again or repetitively is obsession. Now the next question. The next question is based on Carl Roger's theory. So Carl Rogers under his approach gave these 4 terms. So let's understand all 4 of these one by one. Let's first understand the term and then we'll solve the question. Okay. So you have the first term, self-actualization tendency. Self-actualization tendency, what does it mean? It means you are able to fulfill one's own potential. So I have a potential of doing something and I am trying to fulfill that potential. That is what is self-actualizing tendency, and I am trying to attain the highest level of human being. The next is organismic valuing process. What does it mean? It is a kind of intuitive process which tells me what is good for me and what is bad for me. So it's basically distinction between good and bad. Okay. Next is experiential freedom. What does it mean? I have freedom to think. I have freedom to take responsibility for my own actions. So that is through my experiences. I am free to do things and I can take responsibilities for all those things. And finally, organismic trusting is I am relying on what I am doing. Okay. So for example, I am taking an important decision on my life of my life, but I am very confident that I will do it correctly. So what is there is I am relying on my own experiences and my feelings, and I am taking some important decisions based on my own judgment. So that is what is organismic trusting. Now let's come to the question. The ability to consult and rely on one's experiences and feelings to make important decisions, as we discussed, is organismic trusting. So here's the answer for this question. The last question is a question based on assertion reason. Let's understand this question. Now, before we understand this question again, we'll be talking something about crystallized intelligence and fluid intelligence. Fluid intelligence is basically intelligence about abstract. Okay, for example, recognition of patterns, thinking abstractly, reasoning. So that is all fluid intelligence. What is crystallized intelligence on the other hand? Crystallized intelligence is having very deep knowledge, a very good general knowledge about things, good vocabulary, ability to reason out words and numbers. Okay. Now what is here is fluid ability, as we said, is the ability to reason. Since it's an ability to reason and it's abstract in nature, because you are recognizing things by pattern and pictures, you do not require a specific culture, or it won't vary from culture to culture, so it is basically culture free. That's the first thing. While on the other hand, crystallized intelligence is based on vocabulary, so it is cultural dependent. So you have barriers like language. Okay. Again, we say fluid intelligence is culture free because it is through the kind of acquired experience that comes up. So crystallized is developed through the investment in fluid intelligence in cultural settings. That's correct. Okay. Then environments that affect educational and cultural opportunities influence crystallized intelligence directly, and fluid intelligence directly is incorrect, because Crystallized intelligence is a product of educational and cultural experiences which interact with fluid intelligence. It's not something that is affecting crystallized intelligence and indirectly affecting fluid intelligence, but crystallized intelligence is a result of educational and cultural processes, is a product of educational and cultural processes or interactions which are done with fluid intelligence. Okay, so this is the correct explanation here. So with this, we covered the set of 15 questions for today. We'll be covering the next set of questions in the tomorrow's session. So stay tuned for more coverage on UGC Psychology Paper 3 for June 2014 examination. These paper solutions will help you understand what type of questions are asked in UGC examination and which are the areas you need to focus. Have a good day ahead.